Here's just something fun and interesting to listen to. It's a short form, 6.5 minute true story. It is a future release going to come out officially in a few months on my second podcast, True Stories with Seth Andrews. That show's getting noticed. We just crested 350,000 downloads on 114 shows. And we had billboards up around my hometown for 4 weeks, and you made that happen. And it's just so exciting. So listen, enjoy, and then go subscribe to True Stories with Seth Andrews on all major podcast apps. And then share it on your social media and tell your family and friends about it. Help me get the word out. Today's 6.5 minute feature is called The Slots of Sin. I'm Seth Andrews, and what you're about to hear is a true story. January 24th, 1942, New York City. Police headquarters had received a surprise visit from the mayor, Fiorello LaGuardia. And the matter he wanted to discuss was an urgent one. There was an enemy of the people out there. It threatened the city and state of New York and even the entire United States, its economy, its morality, its future. It was slot machines. Gambling was a vice, a sin, a blot on polite society. And Mayor LaGuardia issued the order. Every available patrolman was to report for duty to conduct a raid on a local establishment that had slot machine gambling going on inside its walls. I guess every generation has seen its moral panic. We saw the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. In the decades after that, the media was literally whitewashed. So many things were forbidden to be shown on television, including toilets. In the mid-20th century, you could not show a toilet on TV. Married couples, they couldn't be in the same bed, even fully clothed, preparing for sleep. No, they had to be placed in separate twin beds. Elvis Presley performed his music on the Ed Sullivan television show, but the cameras would only show him from the waist up because his gyrating legs were far too suggestive and sexual. Comic books weren't immune from moral panic. Graphic novels considered too sinister were often rounded up and tossed into piles and set on fire. And gambling? Oh no, gambling was definitely frowned upon. Mayor LaGuardia had been on a long crusade. He used to be a congressman after the First World War. He actually introduced a failed gambling prohibition back in the 1930s, and then he ran for mayor. And part of his platform was against slot machines. He called this, quote, a citizens' movement for the salvation of the city. His message to New York was clear: the slots perpetuate the sin. And part of what drove this opposition to gambling was the whole idea of playing games where your fate is left to blind luck. There's no skill involved whatsoever. It's all chance. You're essentially casting lots. Your chances of winning are slim. And with those slot machines that flashed and beeped and mesmerized, the public would be hypnotized into wickedness and waste. Now, it's true that there was kind of a dark side to some of this. The mafia had found a way to use these machines to make and launder money. And of course, nobody could say that these slot machines weren't addictive. People standing there for long periods of time, locked in that spot, sometimes ignoring their responsibilities as they fed the beast and bled their pockets and wallets and bank accounts dry. Oh no, Mayor LaGuardia wasn't going to have any of this. And as mayor of New York, he finally got his great excuse to nix the slot machines just after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Aha! The United States was at war. We were in a war footing. We needed every resource, including the metal that was used to make slot machines. Slots were superfluous. We needed that metal for armor and guns and bullets. And so the war on slots carried through the early 1940s so many police raids. Every other day they would bust into a new operation and seize hundreds of these machines and confiscate maybe $10,000 a week that sometimes suspiciously got put into a police pension fund. Oh yeah, that sounds like a racket. Police warehouses filled up with these confiscated machines. The NYPD held public press conferences showing off their confiscations. In fact, there was one newsreel with Mayor LaGuardia with a sledgehammer, and he was smashing a slot machine to bits. Other cities also jumped on this bandwagon with their own bans. Chicago, Portland, Los Angeles, Boston, and others. Some of these bans went on for decades. The New York ban was not overturned until 1976, when an expert did a demonstration before the New York City Council showing them that no, these were not just games of blind luck, but in fact, a player actually needed a measure of skill. And so, in 1976, those machines were finally deemed at least somewhat acceptable, certainly legal. But the moral panickers and the pulpit pounders and the harbingers of doom continued to cry foul against those insidious gambling boxes, the devices of debasement, those very specific types of slot machine devils that were draining pockets and dragging society into the thick mire of moral decay. Pinball machines. And the story of the American 20th century war on pinball is a true story.
TrueStoriesPodcast.com